Dr. Alexander, a dedicated young surgeon, is on his way home after a long day when he encounters a young girl, Alice, injured and in pain on the street. Without hesitation, he rushes her to the hospital and performs a crucial surgery, despite the risks. However, this act of compassion leads to unforeseen consequences when he faces disciplinary action at the hospital. The situation takes a dramatic turn when he discovers that Alice is a missing child and her desperate mother is searching for her. What begins as a noble deed soon spirals into a tense and emotional encounter, leaving Alexander in a precarious position as he tries to reunite mother and daughter. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As the clock ticked closer to 8 p.m., Alexander finally left the hospital, his footsteps echoing softly through the quiet, dimly lit streets. The city had taken on an eerie stillness, with only the occasional hum of a distant car breaking the silence. His backpack felt heavier than usual, filled with the weight of a day filled with challenges and emotional exhaustion. Yet, despite his fatigue, Alexander chose to walk home, seeking solace in the gentle rhythm of his footsteps as he processed the events of the day. It was during these quiet moments that he often reflected on the path that had brought him to this point, a journey marked by ambition, sacrifice, and a deep-seated desire to heal. At just 28 years old, Alexander was already a respected surgeon, a title he had worked tirelessly to earn. His dream of becoming a doctor had been born in childhood, nurtured by his mother, Jenny, who had always believed in his potential despite the hardships they faced. Jenny's life had been tragically cut short a decade earlier by a kidney disease that had been discovered too late to treat. Her untimely death shattered Alexander, but it also fueled his determination to excel in his studies, driving him to become the skilled surgeon he is today. As he walked, memories of his mother flooded his mind, her gentle smile, her unwavering support, and the dreams they had shared. Lost in thought, Alexander almost missed the small figure huddled on the sidewalk near the park. The sight brought him back to reality. A young girl, no more than 9 years old, sat there, clutching her arm with a pained expression, tears streaming down her face. His heart clenched at the sight, and his medical instincts kicked in immediately. "Hi, I'm Alexander. Are you hurt?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. The girl sniffled, trying to speak through her sobs. "My arm hurts." "A lot," she whimpered. "I'm Alice." With a quick examination, Alexander realized her arm was broken, a serious injury that required urgent care. "Alice, I'm going to take you to the hospital." "Okay," he said softly. She nodded, trusting him, and he carefully scooped her into his arms, hurrying to his car. The hospital was close, but the drive felt agonizingly slow for Alice, who winced with every bump in the road, clutching her arm tighter as they went. Alexander could feel her pain, and it gnawed at him. Once at the hospital, he immediately took her to the emergency room, where an X-ray confirmed the fracture. As they waited, Alexander distracted Alice with stories from his childhood, tales of how he had dreamed of becoming a doctor, just like the ones who had tried to save his mother. The stories seemed to calm her, at least for a moment, but the severity of her injury hung heavily in the air. The chief surgeon, Mr. Maurice, was not available, leaving Alexander with a difficult decision. The procedure was straightforward enough, but hospital protocol was clear: surgical operations required authorization. Alexander knew the risks of proceeding without permission, yet the thought of leaving Alice in pain was unbearable. He resolved to take action. "We'll get through this together, Alice. I promise you'll be okay," he reassured her, as much for himself as for her. The surgery went smoothly, with Alexander opting for local anesthesia to minimize risks. By the time it was over, Alice's arm was in a cast, and she was finally able to relax, her face showing relief for the first time since they had met. But as the adrenaline wore off, Alexander was left with the stark reality of what he had done. Alice had no one to pay for the surgery, and she hadn't even completed the necessary preoperative exams. "Alice, we can't stay here," he said gently. "I'm going to take you home." "Okay," the girl's eyes filled with tears. "But I need to go back to my house. My mom will be worried." His heart ached for her. "We'll figure it out together," he promised, determined to protect her. At his apartment, Alexander tried to find out more about where she lived or any way to contact her family, but Alice, overwhelmed by the trauma, couldn't remember much. "Don't worry, Alice. We'll sort everything out tomorrow," he said, tucking a blanket around her on the sofa. Exhausted, Alexander collapsed into a nearby armchair, his mind swirling with thoughts concern for Alice, fear of the consequences of his actions, and the weight of his conscience. Yet, despite the turmoil, he felt no regret. Looking at the sleeping girl, he knew he had done what was right. His mother's legacy wasn't just about being a skilled surgeon, it was about being compassionate and about helping those in need no matter the cost. The dawn broke, casting a soft light across the room as Alexander awoke, feeling the fatigue from the night before. He brewed a quick cup of coffee and checked on Alice, still sleeping soundly on the sofa. Scribbling a note, he explained that he had to return to the hospital and would be back soon. He left the TV on and placed some snacks within reach, hoping she would feel safe until his return. Back at the hospital, he was met with a sense of unease. A nurse approached him with urgency in her eyes. "Dr. Alexander, Mr. Maurice needs to see you in his office now." Alexander's heart raced as he walked to the chief surgeon's office, a sense of dread settling in his chest. Maurice was seated behind his desk, his face stern. "Sit down, Alexander," he ordered. The young doctor complied, trying to remain composed. "I've heard some troubling reports," Maurice began, his tone heavy with authority. "Rumor has it you performed unauthorized surgery on a child last night." Alexander swallowed hard, summoning the courage to respond. "Yes, sir." The situation was critical. The girl, Alice, had a severely broken arm and needed immediate surgery. "You were unavailable, and I made a judgment call." Maurice sighed deeply, rubbing his temples in frustration. "I understand your desire to help, Alexander, and your actions were well-intentioned. But rules exist for a reason. You put the hospital at risk with your decision." Alexander felt his chest tighten, the gravity of his actions weighing heavily on him. He knew Maurice was right, but the thought of letting Alice suffer was something he could never have lived with. "I know, sir," Alexander replied, his voice steady. "But at that moment, I had to do what I felt was right." Alexander felt his world shatter as Maurice's words echoed in his mind, leaving him numb. Fired. He had been dismissed from the job he had dedicated his life to, the career he had sacrificed so much for. The desolation was overwhelming as he slowly rose from his seat, unable to muster a single word in response. His dream of being a healer, of saving lives, had just crumbled before his eyes. Without looking back, he walked out of Maurice's office, his mind clouded with disbelief and sorrow. When he finally returned to his apartment, the familiar warmth of home did little to comfort him. Alice was still asleep on the sofa, unaware of the turmoil that had just unfolded. Alexander sighed heavily, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Desperate for distraction, he turned on the television, hoping to find something that could take his mind off the devastating news. But as he flipped through the channels, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. A news report caught his attention, freezing him in place. The screen displayed the image of a young girl reported missing. Alexander's breath hitched as he recognized the face staring back at him. It was Alice, the girl he had just operated on. The girl was now asleep in his living room. "It can't be," he whispered, his voice trembling as he turned up the volume. The reporter was describing Alice's disappearance and the frantic search by her mother, Victoria. A phone number flashed on the screen, urging anyone with information to call. Without hesitation, Alexander grabbed his phone and dialed the number, his hands shaking with urgency. After a few rings, a woman's voice answered, filled with anxiety. "Hello," the voice on the other end was strained, a mix of hope and fear. "Hello, my name is Alexander. I'm with Alice, the girl you're looking for. She's safe, and she's okay," he said, his voice firm despite his racing heart. There was a long pause, and then the voice responded, trembling with emotion. "Where is she? Can I see her?" Victoria's desperation was palpable. "Yes, of course. I'll give you the address, but please come calmly." "Alice is a bit scared," Alexander replied, trying to reassure her. After hanging up, Alexander glanced at Alice, still peacefully sleeping. He knew he needed to put Victoria's mind at ease, so he carefully took a photo of Alice resting on the sofa and sent it to her mother with a short message. "Here is Alice. She is safe and sound. I'll be waiting for you." Time seemed to drag as he waited, each minute feeling like an hour. He knew Victoria must be overwhelmed with worry, and he shared her anxiety, knowing he would have to explain everything. Finally, the doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Alexander's heart pounded as he opened the door, expecting to see Victoria. But as the door swung open, his eyes widened in surprise and dread. Victoria was there, but she wasn't alone. Two police officers flanked her, their expressions stern and unyielding. "Are you Alexander?" one of the officers asked, his voice cold. "Yes, I am," Alexander replied, feeling a cold sweat forming. "We need to talk. Please come with us." The other officer said, stepping forward with handcuffs ready. Victoria, her eyes red with tears, looked directly at Alexander. "Where is my daughter?" she asked, her voice breaking. Alexander's stomach dropped. "She's here, inside. She's fine," he tried to explain, but the officers were already moving to restrain him. "Wait. Please just let me show you," Alexander pleaded as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The officers, maintaining their stern demeanor, escorted him inside. One of them turned to Victoria, asking, "Mom, can you show us where the girl is?" Nodding shakily, Victoria led them to the guest room where Alice lay. Seeing her daughter, Victoria rushed to her side, kneeling beside the bed and gently stroking Alice's hair. Relief washed over her as she whispered, "She's okay. She's okay." The officers examined the scene, their tension easing as they realized the girl was indeed safe. One of the officers looked back at Alexander, still handcuffed. "Sir, it seems there's been a misunderstanding. Let's clarify this here. Can you tell us what happened?" The relief in the room was almost tangible as Alexander began to recount the events, detailing how he found Alice injured, took her to the hospital, and performed the necessary surgery. As he spoke, Victoria's expression softened. She could see now that Alexander had acted out of compassion, not malice. "I was terrified," Sir Victoria interjected to the officer. "I thought she had been kidnapped, but it seems he did help her." The officers exchanged knowing glances, and one of them finally spoke. "It appears everything is clear, but we need to hear the miner's account to conclude this." Alice, groggy from sleep, stirred at the sound of voices. When she saw her mother, she leaped out of bed and into Victoria's arms. "Mom, Uncle Alexander helped me. I hurt my arm, and he fixed it," she said, her voice filled with innocent trust. The officer looked at Victoria, then at Alexander. "Mom, it seems this was all a misunderstanding. Alexander seems to have acted out of genuine concern for your daughter Victoria." Now calm, turned to Alexander, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you, Alexander. I was so scared. Please forgive me for calling the police." Her voice quivered with emotion. Alexander, though still shaken, managed a weak smile. "You don't need to apologize, Victoria. You were just being a mother. The important thing is that Alice is safe." One of the officers, seeking to ensure everything was documented correctly, asked, "Mr. Alexander, can you walk us through the events once more?" Alexander nodded and began to explain everything again, from the moment he found Alice to the surgery he performed and why he brought her home. The officers listened carefully, taking notes, while Victoria held Alice close, her fear gradually dissipating. After hearing the full account, the officer turned to Alice. Is everything Dr. Alexander said true, Alice? Did he help you? Yes, he helped me a lot. He made the pain go away, Alice said simply, hugging her mother tightly. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Alexander. You saved my daughter. I can't believe I ever thought otherwise, the officer, satisfied with the explanations, finally removed the handcuffs. It's clear now that this was a big misunderstanding. We'll report everything accordingly, he said, offering Alexander a nod of respect. As he rubbed his wrists, Alexander felt a wave of relief wash over him. I'm sorry for all this trouble, Victoria said, still emotional. I didn't know what else to do. Alexander shook his head. It's all right, Victoria. Any mother would have done the same. I'm just glad Alice is okay, but Victoria's concern shifted as she remembered something. What about your job, Alexander? What did the hospital say after you helped Alice? She asked, her tone heavy with worry. Alexander's shoulders slumped as the reality of his situation came crashing back. I was fired, he admitted. Maurice said I violated hospital protocols by performing the surgery without authorization. But I would do it again if it meant helping Alice. A determined look crossed Victoria's face as she processed his words. That's not right, she declared. You did the right thing, and you shouldn't be punished for it. We're going to fix this, Alexander. The next morning, with a sense of renewed purpose, Alexander accompanied Victoria and Alice to the hospital. Victoria was resolute, leading the way with a determined stride. When they reached Maurice's office, she didn't hesitate to confront him. Mr. Maurice, we need to talk, she announced as they entered. Maurice looked up, surprised to see them. Alexander, why are you here? I already terminated your employment, he said sharply. But before Alexander could respond, Victoria stepped forward. Mr. Maurice, this man saved my daughter's life. He acted when no one else could. I will not stand by and let him be dismissed for doing what was necessary, she said firmly. Maurice frowned, clearly confused. And who are you, exactly, he asked. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm Victoria Guzman, daughter of Oscar Guzman, the owner of this hospital, she replied, her voice steady. Maurice's expression shifted to one of shock as he realized who he was dealing with. Alexander was equally stunned by the revelation. Victoria didn't give Maurice time to recover. Alexander should be reinstated, and not only that, he should be recognized for his actions. He saved my daughter, and that's what matters most, she insisted, her voice leaving no room for argument. Maurice hesitated, clearly torn between the rules he upheld and the reality of the situation. After a long pause, he sighed, realizing the gravity of his decision. Very well, Miss Guzman. I'll review the situation, but I must insist that we adhere to hospital policies moving forward. Victoria nodded, her gaze unwavering. I appreciate that, Mr. Maurice. But remember, sometimes rules need to bend when it's a matter of life and death. With that, the tension in the room eased, and Alexander felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. The nightmare was finally coming to an end. Maurice stood frozen, his lips tightly pressed together as he absorbed the weight of Victoria's words. He knew there was little he could say against the daughter of the hospital's owner. With a reluctant nod, he finally conceded, very well. I will inform Mr. Guzman. We will resolve this matter. Victoria, with an air of quiet authority, acknowledged his words with a slight nod before turning to Alexander. Let's go, Alexander. We need to ensure this situation is addressed properly. As they waited in the corridor, a palpable tension filled the air. It wasn't long before the imposing figure of Oscar Guzman, the hospital's owner, arrived. His presence was immediately felt commanding yet concerned, as he approached them with purpose. His gaze shifted from Victoria to Alexander, and then to the young girl by their side. Victoria, what's going on here? Oscar asked, his tone laced with both curiosity and authority. Victoria wasted no time, her voice firm with conviction. Father, this is Dr. Alexander. He saved Alice's life when she was in danger. but Maurice fired him for acting swiftly in an emergency. This is a grave injustice, and it needs to be corrected. Oscar's sharp eyes turned to Alexander, studying him intently. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke. "Dr. Alexander, I want to hear from you. Tell me what happened." With composure, Alexander recounted the events once more, how he found Alice, recognized the urgency of her injury, and performed the surgery to save her. Oscar listened without interruption, his expression unreadable as the story unfolded. When Alexander finished, Oscar turned his attention to Maurice, who was standing uneasily to the side. "Maurice, is this true?" he asked, his voice steady but demanding. Maurice shifted uncomfortably, knowing he was on shaky ground. "Yes, Mr. Guzman, it's true. But I was only following hospital protocols," he stammered, his words lacking the usual confidence. Oscar remained silent for a moment, weighing the situation carefully. Finally, he spoke, his voice resolute. "Maurice, I understand the importance of protocols, but in emergencies we must prioritize saving lives. Dr. Alexander did exactly what was needed, and for that he should be commended, not punished. You are relieved of your duties for failing to recognize this." The words hit Maurice like a thunderbolt, leaving him speechless. But it was what came next that left everyone stunned. Turning to Alexander, Oscar continued, "Dr. Alexander, effective immediately, you are the new chief of surgery at this hospital. Your actions proved your dedication and your capability under pressure, and this hospital needs leaders like you." Alexander was taken aback, struggling to process what he had just heard. His heart swelled with gratitude and disbelief. "Sir, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much," he managed to utter, his voice thick with emotion. Victoria's face lit up with a smile, clearly pleased with the outcome. Oscar, placing a reassuring hand on Alexander's shoulder, said, "Just continue to do the excellent work you've been doing. This hospital is in good hands with you." As they walked out of the office, Alexander felt a wave of relief and renewed purpose wash over him. The despair that had gripped him only hours earlier was now replaced with a profound sense of hope and responsibility. Victoria glanced at him, her eyes warm and supportive. "You deserve this, Alexander," she said softly, "and know that I'm here to help with anything you need." With those words, Alexander felt a deep sense of validation, not just for the actions he had taken to save Alice, but for the path he had chosen as a healer. It was a new beginning, one forged from crisis, compassion, and the unwavering belief that doing what's right sometimes requires bending the rules. And as he looked ahead, Alexander knew he would carry that lesson with him, leading with the same determination and integrity that had brought him here. The days following Victoria's revelation brought a whirlwind of change to Alexander's life. Word of his unexpected promotion to chief of surgery spread rapidly through the hospital, earning him newfound respect and curiosity from his peers. But beyond the professional shift, it was the steady presence of Victoria and Alice that marked the most profound transformation in his life. What began as routine meetings to discuss hospital matters soon evolved into something more: lunches and coffee breaks that became opportunities for genuine camaraderie and blossoming friendship. Victoria was more than just the daughter of the hospital's owner. She was a woman of remarkable intelligence, integrity, and strength. Her admiration for Alexander grew, not just for his exceptional skills as a surgeon, but for his unwavering compassion and bravery in the face of difficult decisions. Likewise, Alexander found in Victoria a steadfast ally, someone who understood the complexities of his work and supported him without hesitation. As they spent more time together, their conversations gradually drifted away from the confines of work, delving into deeper topics: life's dreams, fears, and personal histories. Alexander found solace in sharing memories of his late mother, Jenny, who had inspired his journey into medicine, while Victoria opened up about her upbringing and the values instilled in her by her father, Oscar. Meanwhile, Alice thrived in the presence of Alexander. She eagerly anticipated his visits, cherishing the small gestures of kindness he consistently showed her. Whether helping with her schoolwork or spending time playing in the park, Alexander became a father figure in her life. Alice felt a deep sense of safety and love, her joyful smile reflecting the nurturing environment that was gradually forming around her. One sunny afternoon, as they strolled through the park, Alice clasped Alexander's hand, walking alongside him with a contented grin. Victoria trailed slightly behind, watching them with a warm smile, her heart swelling with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The bond between the three of them was growing, feeling more and more like a real family. "Uncle Alexander, will you come to dinner with us tonight?" Alice asked, her eyes sparkling with hope. Alexander glanced at Victoria, who gave an approving nod, her smile mirroring her daughter's. "I'd love to," Alexander replied, his heart light with genuine happiness. That evening, the dinner table was filled with laughter and lively conversation. Victoria's home, which had once felt large and empty, now brimmed with warmth and joy. Alice was positively radiant, her laughter infectious, and Victoria could hardly contain her happiness as she watched her daughter so full of life. After dinner, as Alice busied herself with drawing in the living room, Victoria and Alexander lingered in the kitchen, the atmosphere between them comfortable and easy. "Thank you, Alexander," Victoria said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "You've brought so much happiness into our lives." Alexander looked at her, his expression tender. "It's me who should be thanking you, Victoria. You and Alice have brought a lot of joy into my life, too," he replied warmly. "I feel like I've found a place where I belong," he added, his smile gentle and genuine. The connection between Alexander and Victoria deepened with each passing day. There was something unspoken between them, a growing affection that extended beyond the bounds of friendship. It was a bond rooted in mutual respect, admiration, and a shared sense of purpose, a bond that neither had yet put into words, but both felt in their hearts. As they stood there, side by side, the warmth and understanding between them spoke louder than words, hinting at a future filled with hope, love, and the possibility of something truly special. As the night drew to a close, Alexander bid farewell to Victoria and Alice, promising to return soon. The walk back to his apartment was filled with quiet reflection. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for having crossed paths with such remarkable people. The warmth of their companionship reminded him of what he had always longed for, a sense of belonging and a connection that went beyond mere friendship. He knew that his mother, Jenny, would be proud of the life he was building, a life grounded in love, kindness, and purpose. Meanwhile, Victoria tucked Alice into bed, unable to suppress the smile that had been lingering on her lips all evening. She could feel the positive shift in her life, a shift that Alexander had brought with him. As she turned off the lights and settled into her bed, her thoughts lingered on how bright the future seemed with Alexander by her side. There was a new lightness in her heart, a hope that hadn't been there before. Day by day, the bond between Alexander, Victoria, and Alice grew more profound. What started as a simple connection had blossomed into a relationship filled with affection, understanding, and mutual support. They were becoming a family, in every sense of the word, and the joy of that realization filled Alexander with a newfound determination. He knew that this bond was something he wanted to nurture for the rest of his life. As the weeks passed, the routine of shared dinners, park outings, and quiet evenings together solidified their relationship. For Alexander, the presence of Victoria and Alice had become an integral part of his life. He no longer saw them as just friends, they were his family, and he was ready to make that official. One evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Alexander decided that the time had come to take the next step. The atmosphere at dinner was lively, with Alice animatedly discussing her school projects and Victoria sharing her latest experiences at the hospital. Alexander, though nervous, felt a deep sense of certainty in his heart. He waited for the right moment, and then, as the meal wound down, he looked at Victoria and spoke. "Victoria, can we talk for a moment after dinner?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Victoria nodded with a warm smile, though her eyes held a hint of curiosity. Of course, Alexander. After dinner, while Alice was engrossed in her drawings in the living room, Alexander and Victoria stepped out onto the porch. The night was calm, the gentle breeze carrying with it the distant hum of the city. The peaceful setting seemed perfect for what Alexander was about to say. Victoria Alexander began, taking her hand in his. These last few months have been transformative for me. Being with you and Alice has made me realize what it means to truly belong and to have a family. You've both become so important to me, and I don't want that to ever change. Victoria's eyes glistened with emotion as she listened, sensing the weight of his words. Victoria, I love you. I love Alice. And I want us to be a real family, Alexander continued, his voice filled with sincerity. Would you do me the honor of being my girlfriend? Tears welled up in Victoria's eyes as she smiled brightly, her heart swelling with happiness. Alexander, I love you too. There's nothing I want more than to be with you. Yes, I will be your girlfriend, she replied, pulling him into a heartfelt embrace. Relief and joy washed over Alexander as her words sank in. They shared a tender kiss, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Unbeknownst to them, Alice had been watching from a distance, her eyes wide with excitement. Unable to contain herself, she ran over to them, her face beaming. Uncle Alexander, are you going to be ours for real now? She asked, her voice full of delight. Alexander chuckled and scooped her up into his arms, spinning her around as he answered, Yes, Alice, now we are a real family. From that moment on, the relationship between Alexander and Victoria flourished even further. They were no longer just companions, they were partners in every sense. Their personal lives intertwined beautifully with their professional lives, creating a synergy that benefited not only them but also those around them. At the hospital, Alexander's reputation grew as both a skilled surgeon and a compassionate leader. His colleagues admired his ability to balance his technical expertise with genuine care for his patients and staff. Patients, too, could sense the change in him. There was an undeniable aura of confidence, warmth, and reassurance that put everyone at ease. Alexander had become more than just a doctor, he was a beacon of hope and comfort for those in need. His ability to connect with people on a deeper level made him a natural leader, one who led with both his heart and his mind. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the bond between Alexander, Victoria, and Alice only grew stronger. Together, they built a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities, a life that Jenny, Alexander's mother, would indeed have been proud of. Alice was thrilled with the idea of Alexander becoming a permanent part of her life. She adored the time they spent together, cherished the new things she learned from him, and felt deeply secure in his presence. The family dynamic they had created was one of warmth, love, and mutual respect, a haven where each of them felt truly at home. One weekend, they decided to enjoy a picnic in a nearby park. The day was bright and filled with laughter, playful games, and tender moments that seemed to capture the essence of their bond. As Alexander watched Victoria and Alice running through the grass, their laughter ringing out like music, he felt a profound sense of peace and contentment. Despite all the challenges he had faced in life, he knew he had finally found his place in the world. As they sat together on the picnic blanket, Alexander pulled Victoria close and wrapped his arms around both her and Alice. "You are everything to me," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Victoria smiled up at him, her eyes shining with love. "And you are everything to us," she replied, leaning in to kiss him softly. From that moment on, the lives of Alexander, Victoria, and Alice settled into a harmonious rhythm. They faced every challenge hand in hand, supporting one another through thick and thin, and celebrating each victory, no matter how small. The love they shared grew stronger with each passing day, bringing with it a sense of hope and endless possibilities for the future. Months later, As their engagement blossomed into plans for marriage, the excitement in their household was palpable. Alexander and Victoria were busy with wedding preparations, ensuring that every detail was perfect. From choosing the venue to picking out flowers, each decision was a joyful reminder of the love they shared. Alice, now 11 years old, was especially excited about the upcoming wedding. As the maid of honor, she took her role very seriously and threw herself into the preparations with boundless enthusiasm. Her energy filled the house with laughter and anticipation. "Mom, look at this dress. It would be perfect for the ceremony," Alice exclaimed, holding up a catalog filled with beautiful dresses for maids of honor. Victoria smiled warmly at her daughter. "It's gorgeous, Alice. We'll try on a few to see which one looks best on you," she replied, her eyes twinkling with joy. While Victoria and Alice focused on the ceremony, Alexander took charge of organizing the reception. He wanted the day to be flawless and devoted himself to ensuring every aspect was special and memorable. The preparations were a labor of love, but they weren't without their challenges. There were moments of stress, disagreements, and difficult decisions to make, but their unity as a family saw them through each obstacle. One evening, after a particularly tense day, Alexander took Victoria's hand and spoke with quiet determination. "I know this can be stressful, but we're in this together. And in the end, it will be a perfect day because it's about us, our love, and our family." Victoria squeezed his hand and smiled, her worries easing. "You're right, Alexander. The most important thing is that we're celebrating our love and the family we've built together." As the wedding day approached, the excitement in their home grew. Friends and family eagerly awaited the celebration, and the atmosphere buzzed with joyful anticipation. The house was a flurry of activity as final preparations were made, yet beneath it all was a serene joy that only true love could bring. The day finally arrived, and as Alexander stood at the altar, watching Victoria walk down the aisle with Alice by her side, he felt his heart swell with happiness. The journey that had brought them here had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every step. Surrounded by their loved ones, they made vows not just to each other but to the family they had become. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, heartfelt toasts, and the warmth of shared memories. It was a day that reflected everything they had worked for: the love, the commitment, and the unbreakable bond that tied them together. As the evening drew to a close, with the stars shining brightly above, Alexander, Victoria, and Alice knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together, a journey that promised a future filled with love, hope, and endless joy. Finally, all the preparations were complete. The venue was adorned with beautiful flowers, the menu carefully selected, and the invitations had been sent out to those who mattered most. The time had come for Alexander, Victoria, and Alice to embark on a new chapter of their lives together, surrounded by the warmth and love of their closest friends and family. As the evening before the wedding fell, the three of them gathered around the dinner table for a quiet, intimate meal at home. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, shared stories, and a deep sense of appreciation for one another. Alexander looked at Victoria and Alice, his heart swelling with gratitude for the family they had become. "Tomorrow will be an unforgettable day, and I'm so grateful to have you both by my side," Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're just as grateful to have you," Alexander, Victoria replied, her eyes reflecting the same deep affection, with Alice nodding enthusiastically in agreement. The day of the wedding finally arrived, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions: nervous anticipation, excitement, and overwhelming joy. From the early hours of the morning, the house was alive with activity. Friends and family bustled about, helping with the final touches to ensure everything was perfect. Alice, radiant in her maid of honor dress, was a whirlwind of energy, eager to ensure that the day would go off without a hitch. The ceremony took place in a picturesque garden, a haven surrounded by vibrant, blooming flowers. Rows of white chairs were perfectly aligned, leading to a beautifully adorned altar draped with garlands of flowers and delicate ribbons. The soft, melodic notes of a harp drifted through the air, casting a serene and enchanting ambience over the gathering. In the preparation room, Victoria, dressed in her stunning wedding gown, was surrounded by her closest friends and family. The room was filled with joyful chatter and the occasional tear as they helped her with the final touches. Alice, holding a small bouquet, entered the room and gazed at her mother with pure admiration. "Mom, you look beautiful," Alice said, her eyes shimmering with happiness. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look wonderful too." "I'm so happy you're a part of this special day," Victoria replied, pulling Alice into a tender embrace. On the other side of the garden, Alexander stood with his groomsmen, adjusting his tie as he tried to calm the flutter of nerves in his stomach. He looked toward the altar, imagining Victoria walking down the aisle toward him, and felt a powerful surge of emotion and gratitude. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the culmination of their journey together. When the time finally came, the guests took their seats, and the music shifted to the familiar strains of the wedding march. Everyone rose to their feet, turning to watch as Victoria entered the garden, arm in arm with Alice. Alexander's breath caught in his throat, his eyes brimming with tears as he saw them. Victoria looked like a vision, ethereal and radiant, while Alice, beaming with pride, walked confidently beside her mother, embodying pure joy. The ceremony began with the officiant speaking eloquently about love, union, and the journey that had brought Alexander and Victoria to this moment. Every word resonated deeply, reflecting the profound commitment they were about to make to one another. The vows they exchanged were heartfelt, each promising to cherish and support the other through whatever life may bring. As they placed rings on each other's fingers, sealing their vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The love that Alexander and Victoria shared was palpable, a testament to the strength of their bond and the journey that had brought them to this day. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a wave of applause and cheers erupted from the guests. Alexander and Victoria shared a kiss that felt like the beginning of forever, with Alice clapping excitedly beside them. As they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, the sun shining brightly above them, they knew they were stepping into a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The reception that followed was a joyful celebration, filled with dancing, heartfelt toasts, and the warmth of family and friends. It was a day that none of them would ever forget, a day that marked the beginning of a new and beautiful chapter in their lives. As the night drew to a close, under a sky full of stars, Alexander, Victoria, and Alice knew they had found something truly special, a family built on love, trust, and a shared dream of a bright and happy future together. As the ceremony reached its climax, the officiant turned to Alexander and asked the pivotal question, "Alexander, do you take Victoria as your lawful wife, to love her, respect her, and protect her in joy and sorrow, in health and sickness, every day of your life?" Alexander, his voice filled with emotion and conviction, replied, "I do, with all my heart." The officiant then turned to Victoria, "And you, Victoria, do you take Alexander as your lawful husband, to love him, respect him, and support him in joy and sorrow, in health and sickness, every day of your life?" With a heartfelt smile, Victoria responded, "I do, with all my heart." Her words resonated with the deep love she held for Alexander. Nearby, Alice clutched her bouquet, her face beaming with happiness as she watched the moment unfold. When the officiant finally declared them husband and wife, Alexander and Victoria leaned in for a kiss, sealing their vows before their loved ones. The crowd erupted in applause, celebrating the union of two souls who had weathered life's storms to find their way to each other. The reception that followed was a jubilant affair, filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Emotional speeches were given, recounting Alexander and Victoria's journey and the importance of the family they had formed. Alice, never far from the couple, was the picture of pure joy, dancing and playing with her friends and family, her laughter echoing through the night. When it was time for Alexander and Victoria to share their first dance as husband and wife, they moved together with grace, their eyes locked on each other. In that moment, it was as if the world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them, bound by love and a shared future. The music, the lights, the celebration, it all paled in comparison to the connection they felt. As the night continued, filled with more dancing, toasts, and joyous celebrations, the challenges they had once faced seemed distant. All that mattered now was the bright future they had ahead of them. Together with Alice, they were ready to face whatever life might bring, their bond stronger than ever. As the evening wore on, Alexander found himself looking at Victoria and Alice, his heart swelling with a profound sense of gratitude. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, the love they shared would carry them through. With hearts full of hope and happiness, they celebrated the beginning of a new life together, a life as a complete and loving family. The months following the wedding were filled with happiness and tranquility. Alexander, Victoria, and Alice settled into their new life as a family, cherishing each moment. Their home was always filled with laughter, and the joy they shared was palpable. Life felt perfect, and their days were marked by the simple pleasures of being together. But then, something unexpected happened. Victoria began to notice subtle changes in her body, small signs that hinted at something wonderful. After a few weeks of uncertainty, she decided to take a pregnancy test. As she waited for the result, her heart pounded in anticipation. When the result finally appeared, confirming her suspicions, tears of joy filled her eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, Victoria hurried to find Alexander, who was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "Alexander, I have incredible news for you," she said, holding up the pregnancy test with trembling hands. Alexander turned to her, initially puzzled, but as he saw the radiant expression on Victoria's face, understanding dawned on him. A smile began to spread across his face. "Are you pregnant?" he asked, his voice filled with hope and excitement. "Yes, we're going to have a baby," Victoria exclaimed, her laughter mingling with her tears. Overcome with joy, Alexander embraced Victoria tightly, feeling an immense wave of happiness and gratitude wash over him. This was the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, and he couldn't have been more excited to share it with the woman he loved. When they shared the news with Alice, her reaction was pure, unfiltered joy. "I'm going to be a big sister," she shouted, jumping up and down with excitement. "I can't wait to help with the baby." From that moment on, anticipation and excitement became a constant in their lives. Alice's enthusiasm was infectious, as she threw herself into preparing for the arrival of her new sibling. She eagerly made lists of possible names, drew pictures of baby clothes, and even invented stories about the adventures they would have together. Her love for the unborn baby was already boundless. Victoria and Alexander were equally thrilled by the prospect of expanding their family. They began preparing the nursery, carefully selecting every detail to ensure it was perfect. The walls were painted in soft, soothing colors, and a crib was lovingly assembled by Alexander, who took great care in making sure everything was just right. Each preparation was a labor of love, filled with anticipation and joy for the new addition to their family. As they awaited the arrival of their newest family member, the bond between Alexander, Victoria, and Alice grew even stronger. They knew that the journey ahead would bring new challenges and changes, but they also knew that, together, they could face anything. Their home was filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a beautiful future, one that was about to become even brighter with the arrival of their new baby. As Alexander carefully assembled the crib, he looked at Victoria with a smile. "It's going to be a new adventure, isn't it?" Victoria, gently caressing her growing belly, replied, "Definitely. and I'm so happy we're going to face this adventure together." The news of the baby's impending arrival brought immense joy not only to Alexander and Victoria, but also to their extended circle of friends and family. Their home became a hub of excitement, with a steady stream of visitors bearing gifts, warm wishes, and congratulations. The baby was already so loved, even before his first breath. Alice, in particular, was in her element. She adored feeling the baby kick inside Victoria's belly and was captivated by the ultrasound images of her growing brother. With adorable determination, she often declared, "I'm going to be the best big sister ever." The months flew by, filled with preparations and joyful anticipation. Alexander and Victoria attended prenatal classes, devoured parenting books, and did everything possible to prepare for the new chapter in their lives. Alice's boundless enthusiasm only added to the excitement, making every moment even more special. Finally, the day they had been waiting for arrived. Victoria went into labor, and Alexander stayed by her side, holding her hand and offering unwavering support. Meanwhile, Alice anxiously waited with her grandparents in the hospital's waiting room, her heart full of excitement and curiosity. After hours of tense anticipation, the long-awaited moment came. A beautiful, healthy baby boy was born, filling the room with his first cries of life. When Alexander and Victoria held their son for the first time, they were overwhelmed with indescribable joy. "Welcome to the world," Arthur Alexander whispered, tears of happiness glistening in his eyes. A few moments later, Alice entered the room with her grandparents, her eyes wide with wonder as she gazed at her new baby brother. "He's perfect," she whispered, gently touching Arthur's tiny hand with awe and tenderness. At that moment, their family, now complete with the addition of Arthur, felt more whole than ever before. The joy and gratitude that filled their hearts were boundless. Together, Alexander, Victoria, Alice, and Arthur looked forward to a future brimming with love, adventure, and countless unforgettable moments. As the years passed, the lives of Alexander, Victoria, Alice, and Arthur blossomed in ways they could have never imagined. Their family grew stronger and more united with each passing day, building a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual support. Alexander continued to thrive in his role as chief of surgery at the hospital, where his dedication, skill, and compassion were recognized and admired by all. He saved lives daily, but more than that, he inspired and mentored the next generation of doctors, imparting the wisdom and empathy that defined him. Victoria, standing proudly by Alexander's side, was not only his greatest supporter but also a respected figure at the hospital. Together, they were an unstoppable team, skillfully balancing their demanding careers with the nurturing of their children, ensuring their home was always filled with warmth and love. Alice, now a vibrant teenager, flourished in an environment rich with care and encouragement. She excelled in school, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a zest for life. The constant support from her parents and the joyous presence of her little brother, Arthur, gave her the confidence to dream big and pursue her passions. Arthur, for his part, was a source of endless joy. From the moment he was born, his infectious energy and affectionate spirit brought light and laughter to the family. He adored being the center of attention and thrived in the loving embrace of his family. The bond between Alice and Arthur was truly special. They were inseparable, with Alice always ready to care for and play with her little brother. The love that bound Alexander, Victoria, Alice, and Arthur together was the foundation of their lives, allowing them to face every challenge with confidence and grace. As they continued to grow and evolve, they knew that no matter where life took them, they would always have each other, a family united by love, strengthened by shared experiences, and forever bound by the memories they created together. As the years passed, Alexander often found himself reflecting on the path that had brought him to where he was. His thoughts frequently turned to his mother, Jenny, whose unwavering love and dedication had been the cornerstone of his life. She had instilled in him the values that guided him through his career in medicine. And though she was no longer with him, Alexander felt her presence in every life he saved. Each time he helped a patient, he honored her memory, and in doing so, he felt a profound connection to her. He knew that while Jenny never got to see the man he had become, she would be proud of the life he had built. One quiet evening, after a particularly long day at the hospital, Alexander sat on the porch of his home, watching his children, Alice and Arthur, play in the garden. The sight of their laughter and joy brought a smile to his face, filling him with a deep sense of fulfillment. Victoria joined him, sitting beside him and taking his hand in hers. She could see the thoughtful expression on his face and knew he was lost in memories. "I've been thinking a lot about my mother lately," Alexander said quietly, his gaze fixed on the children. "She was the one who inspired me to be who I am today. I hope she's proud of me, wherever she is." Victoria squeezed his hand gently, her eyes full of warmth. "She would be immensely proud, Alexander. You've not only become an incredible doctor, but also a wonderful father and husband. Your mother's legacy lives on through you in everything you do and in the lives you touch." Alexander smiled, feeling a profound peace settle over him. He knew he had built a life that honored his mother's memory, surrounded by a family he loved deeply and who loved him in return. Through his work at the hospital, he continued to make a difference, helping those in need and carrying forward the compassion his mother had instilled in him. As he looked to the future, Alexander felt confident that no matter what challenges might come their way, his family would face them with love and unity. They had created something beautiful and enduring, a legacy of compassion, love, and hope that would carry on for generations. At that moment, Alexander felt that his life was truly complete. He had honored his mother's memory, built a loving family, and dedicated himself to a life of service. The journey had not been easy, but it had been filled with purpose and meaning, and he knew that Jenny would be proud of the man he had become. While Alexander's life flourished, Maurice, the former chief surgeon, faced his journey of reflection and change. After being fired from the hospital, Maurice went through a difficult period of self-examination, forced to confront the rigidity and lack of empathy that had led to his downfall. The situation with Alexander had been a wake-up call, revealing the importance of flexibility, compassion, and the human side of medicine. Determined to turn his life around, Maurice decided to seek a fresh start in another city. After weeks of searching, he found a position at a prestigious hospital known for its patient-centered care and commitment to excellence. The new environment represented a chance for Maurice to begin again, this time with a renewed focus on the values he had learned the hard way. As Maurice settled into his new role, he approached each day with a spirit of humility and service. He reminded himself constantly of the impact his decisions had on patients' lives and their families, and he resolved to lead with empathy and understanding. His past mistakes had taught him that medicine was not just about protocols and procedures, but about the people behind them. One day, while reviewing new patient records, Maurice encountered a case that struck a chord deep within him. It involved a child in critical condition, eerily reminiscent of the situation Alexander had faced with Alice years ago. Maurice knew he had to act quickly, but this time he approached the situation with a heart full of empathy and a commitment to doing what was right. Gathering his team, Maurice explained the urgency of the case and emphasized the need for a collaborative and compassionate approach. Under his leadership, the team worked tirelessly, stabilizing the child and initiating the necessary treatment. The experience was a turning point for Maurice, reaffirming the lessons he had learned and the changes he had made in his life. The child's parents, overcome with emotion, expressed their heartfelt gratitude to Maurice and his team. "Dr. Maurice, we don't know how to thank you for saving our daughter. You gave us hope when we needed it most," they said, tears streaming down their faces. Maurice, deeply moved by their words, responded with sincerity, "I just did what was right. The health and well-being of my patients will always be my top priority. Over time, Maurice became a respected and valued figure at his new hospital. He brought with him not only his vast experience, but also a renewed perspective centered on compassion and holistic care. His colleagues and patients alike noticed the difference in him, and he was admired not only for his skill, but also for the kindness and understanding that now defined his approach to medicine. In the end, both Alexander and Maurice had found their paths, each learning valuable lessons along the way. For Alexander, it was about building a life that honored his mother's memory and making a difference in the world through love and service. For Maurice, it was about rediscovering the true meaning of medicine, caring for people not just with skill but with heart. Both men, in their ways, had created legacies of compassion that would endure far beyond their years, touching countless lives and inspiring others to follow in their footsteps. As we come to the end of this heartfelt journey, we've witnessed the power of love, compassion, and personal growth. From Alexander's commitment to honoring his mother's legacy and building a life filled with purpose, to Maurice's transformation and a renewed focus on empathy in his medical career, we've seen how life's challenges can lead to profound changes and lasting impact. So what have you learned from their stories? Take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts. What's one lesson from Alexander or Maurice that you'll bring into your own life? We'd love to hear your reflections, so please comment below with the one thing you plan to practice in your journey. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.